shall go now to be an heirloom of the North Kingdom, but records of it shall be left in Gondor, where also dwell the heirs of Elendil, lest a time come when the memory of these great matters shall grow dim. And after these words,
hope you have enjoyed a little excerpt from the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. Welcome to today's episode of Ministry Matters That Matter. In today's episode, what I'd like to do, I'm sitting in a rental car. My car's in the shop, but it's a rental car that I'm using for my travels and visits for Heritage Christian. I spend a lot of time on the road as a part of my work at Heritage Christian. And so I am also needing to teach classes, prepare lessons, etc. So I had to figure out how can I do Bible study traveling down the road. I'm not going to pull out a commentary and read it. That's dangerous to other drivers and to myself. So how can I use my ears and how can I use my eyes to prepare lessons without being dangerous to someone else? So I'm just going to share with you some car hacks, if you will, for sermon preparation, some simple apps that are on your phone and so forth. And several of you may use these, but in case you don't, maybe it will be helpful to you, or maybe it'll generate some ideas, or just it'll fuel your desire to search for things that can help you to study on the road while being safe as well. So let me just mention a couple of things that I use. Now you've got here what is I use quite a bit audiobooks as well as Audible. But before I do that, let me start out with UVersion. I use UVersion quite a bit. And I've got it open to Esther chapter 1. It is important that when you're using these tools that you activate them when you are in a parked position. So I'm sitting in a parking space outside my office at Heritage Christian. So like recently I was speaking on the book of Esther at a youth function. And so what I did is before I took off, I opened my YouVersion Bible to the book of Esther. The ESV in Esther has 10 chapters in it, and there is a feature in YouVersion, which is a free app, where I can listen to the ESV, the NIV, maybe the NLT. I've got 3 or 4 different translations that it will read the audio to me. And so I just opened it to Esther chapter 10 and pushed play. We turn the sound back up.
Now in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces, in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his officials and servants.
Now, a couple of things related to that. First of all, I was able to listen to it a number of times in the week leading up to the lesson, and was able to listen to the entire book of Esther while I drove over on that Sunday afternoon to speak there on a Sunday night. So it just allows you to listen to the text over and over. And something that's also helpful as a preacher is to remember that initially the books in our Bible were heard and not read by most of the people exposed to them. People did not have their own copies. They were often, in some areas, you only had one copy of a given letter or book that existed. So they learned the letter by listening to it. So not only does listening to it help you to learn the content of the book that you are wrestling with, but it helps you to think about the perspective of the person who was first exposed to it, or the people, the congregation, etc., that were first exposed to this particular book or letter. And you will find you'll listen to some of these books and there's all this repetition. When you're reading it, maybe the repetition becomes annoying, but if you think about the fact that it was designed to be listened to more than to be read with the eyes, but rather to be read out loud and listened to, then the repetition makes more sense in some of these books, because the book was written for the ear and not for the eyes. And so that repetition, in a world where people did not have their own copies of the book, then that repetition aided them in getting the message. And so Paul especially does that in a number of his letters. So that's one feature that I find helpful, and that is my UVersion Bible reading the text out loud to me. So I do that a lot. In fact, this week, just driving back and forth to the office, I've been working through the book of Matthew. And so in the last 2 days, I think I'm up to Matthew chapter 12. And I'll listen some more going back this afternoon. And so this video is being done on a Tuesday. Another feature that I find very helpful is I have Microsoft on my phone. We actually have Microsoft 365, where it's shared with family and so forth. But I have my PowerPoints on here. If I go speak somewhere, I put my PowerPoint in my phone so that I have it as an emergency backup. But also, if you've got notes for a lesson. So here are some notes that I had gathered related to the book of Esther. So what I did is I had an old sermon on Esther. I started with it, and then I just started adding to it. I started putting in new stories. I started gathering more information. And so I just created a file to put all the information. So, for example, here's some information on Xerxes or Xerxes, depending on how you were taught to pronounce it. Information from the IVP background study Bible, or background commentary. Actually, it's not a study Bible, but a commentary. I've got all of that in there. And so let me give you an example of what can help you. That's a pretty big file. And so I can open it up, and on the Microsoft Word app, there is a read aloud button. So you can punch that read aloud button.
The Greek name for the king the Hebrew text refers to as Ahasuerus, ruled Persia from 486 to 465 BC. His father was Darius the Great, and his mother was Atassa, the daughter of Cyrus. He inherited an extensive empire from his father, but was unable to expand it.
So you can have your notes in here. Let's see, not long ago, I did a message on the Gospel of John when I was speaking at a preacher's retreat. I was just going to look and see if I can find it. It's not popping up quickly. Oh, there you go. So I spoke on the Gospel of John at a workshop, and all I have to do before I leave, again, don't be trying to punch all these buttons while you're driving down the road. If you stop at a stop sign, you stop to get gas, or before you take off. I had 6 pages of notes on the Gospel of John that I plan to share with those who were at the preacher's retreat. So I just opened it up and clicked read aloud.
Introduction to the Gospel of John. Kirk Brothers. Author, the writer of the Gospel of John, does not give his name. There are different suggestions given as to who wrote it. 1. John the Apostle. 2. John the Elder, known in the writings of the Church Fathers. 3. Lazarus. 4. Some 2nd century person.
So those are just some notes that I had down on the Gospel of John. So that's just an example of where I can listen to my notes that I've compiled going down the road. Let's say, for example, that you want to listen to what a commentary says on John chapter 3. If you've got that commentary, like I use the Logos software and I use the Accordance software. My favorite Bible study software is Accordance, but Logos would be a very close second. Both high quality study programs. Well, you can copy and paste John chapter 3, let me say the Tyndale commentary. I can copy John chapter 3 from my Accordance software commentary series, and I can paste that into a Word file. I can then upload it to my phone and then open that Word file and push the read aloud button, and it'll read for me the Tyndale commentary on John chapter 3. So that there are more and more Kindle books that you can get on audio. There's just a lot out there that's available on audio. And so what I have found is, if nothing else, the UVersion Read the Bible Aloud feature and the Read Aloud feature on Microsoft Word are tremendous in helping you to get ready to speak, to prepare lessons, to get content into your mind. Thanks for joining today's episode. I realized as I got into it that probably I had enough material for a couple of episodes. So we'll break off here on some things I do traveling down the road to do sermon prep, and I'll pick up and share some more in our next episode. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Ministry Matters That Matter.